When I was younger, every Sunday evening, me and my brothers had dinner at my grandmother's place. And she would cook us the typical Dutch dinner. A tiny slice of meat, some greens, and always those boiled potatoes. And as very well-behaved kids, we would sit there quietly, emptying our plates. But not exactly by eating our food. Every time my grandmother looked away from the table, we took our chance to cram as many potatoes as possible from our plates into our pockets. And on our way home, we would get rid of the evidence by feeding it to the birds. See, my grandmother, she was very good at one thing, but very bad at another. I'm going to start with the good thing. During the Second World War, my grandmother was a teenager. She survived scarcity and hunger. And traumatized by those experiences, she became an absolute star at preserving food. And the bad thing? I'm sorry if you're listening. But she couldn't cook at all. So after she passed away, we found preserved beans in her basement that were older than I am right now. Or what about those cookies? I bet the cookies we found were dropped by the Canadians celebrating victory over the Nazis. They were still edible, yes. I wouldn't say tasty though. So when I moved away to study, I had to start cooking for myself. And this is when I started to both understand and admire my grandmother. Understand because apparently it is not that easy to cook tasty food. It took me years of practice to be able to prepare a proper dinner. We're not all called Jamie Oliver, right? And admire because I soon discovered how hard it is to keep food fresh. Often I would get back to my tiny flat and open the door to be surprised by the smell of soggy lettuce and molded pasta. And even when I started paying more attention to preserving food, I still had a hard time not wasting any. So it's no wonder that an average person in the Netherlands wastes around 50 kilos of good food each year. Think about that. 50 kilos. That's more than 300 bananas or 125 packages of rice. One person can eat up to 30 days of 50 kilos of food. And it's a lot of money too. It's probably worth a romantic weekend to Paris. And I've got some more bad news for you. In the Netherlands alone, we waste 1/3 of our food available. And a lot of that food gets wasted during production, or in supermarkets, or in restaurants. But did you know that by far the largest share of that waste is domestic food waste? So it's you and me that's causing the biggest problem in our own kitchens. And what makes it even more complicated is that where there are whole libraries written about recipes ranging from boiling an egg to preparing a fluffy French soufflé, there are hardly any books on how to cook without wasting food. So, as a creative entrepreneur and a communication professional, I started looking into the tricks that my grandmother and many thousands of others have been using over the years. And I came across so many brilliant ideas. I ended up with more than 500 tips and decided to put them in a book called Koken met restjes is leuk. Or in Dutch, or in English, Cooking with leftovers is fun. Because it's not just good for our environment, or our conscience, or even our bank accounts to not waste food. It's also a lot of fun, once you get the hang of it. And that's what I'm here to show you today. So let me start by sharing the 3 simple rules that anyone with a kitchen can stick to avoid wasting food and at the same time cook tasty food. The first rule: when it's alive, keep it alive. The second rule: what doesn't kill you, keep it longer. And the third rule: turn dust into gold. So I'm going to start with the first rule. When it's alive, keep it alive. As you probably know, fruits and vegetables are plants, right? Sometimes we don't realize that anymore because often those plants are packed in plastic, frozen, or even chopped up for us. But those plants are often still alive, even when they're on the shelf in the supermarkets. So when food is alive, you need to keep it alive. It is as easy as that. And I'm going to demonstrate that with this lettuce. So all you need to do is keep the lettuce alive like you would do with a bunch of flowers. You just cut off a tiny slice of the stem and you put it in a bowl of water. There's no water in it now, but you should put some water in it. And then you keep it in the refrigerator. And every time you need some lettuce, take it from the refrigerator and you tear off the leaves from the outside. And in this way, you keep the inside alive. I managed to store a lettuce like that for up to 10 weeks. And then I just decided to eat it. And I've got another example like this for you. When you keep the bottom 2 centimeters of a spring onion and you put it into some soil, water it like a plant, and soon enough it will grow a whole new spring onion. If you manage this right, you will never have to buy another spring onion again. So these were just 2 examples of how you can keep food alive. But I promise you, if you experiment with this, you will find many more ingredients that you can either regrow or keep fresher for longer. So the second rule: what doesn't kill you, keep it longer. And I want to start by explicitly warning you. Some types of food that have gone bad can actually kill you, or at least cause severe stomach trouble. So I'm not saying you should eat mold. Please do not eat mold, unless it's a molded cheese, of course. And that being said, I believe that we are too afraid of food these days. We completely rely on what manufacturers put on packages and forget to use our own senses. Take this carton of milk. Milk is often still drinkable up to a week after the use-by date. How can you tell? You just look at it. And when it looks right, you smell it. And when it smells right, you taste it. And when it tastes right, there's nothing wrong with it. Our senses are built to recognize rotten food. You would definitely know it when this milk is off. It would smell bad, it would look funny, and it would taste horrible. And this is when the milk is warning you, do not drink me. Mold is easier to recognize. You can just tell by looking at it, right? But not everything that has mold on it needs to be discarded immediately. With some firm products like a hard cheese, carrots, or cabbage, you can just cut off the molded part and safely eat the rest of it. You just need to make sure that you cut off at least 1 centimeter around the molded part. And always be extra careful when it comes to meat and fish. Once you spot a tiny bit of mold, unfortunately, you need to discard the whole thing. So eat it before it gets molded. time for my third rule, and this is my favorite. Turn dust into gold. Or in this case, turn leftovers into new ingredients. It's called upcycling. And this is where it becomes real fun, because you need to start thinking out of the box. What once was a risotto can now be turned into a burger. I'll show you. So the other day, I made a delicious mushroom risotto. Must look a bit scary to you, this size, but trust me, it was delicious. So anyway, I made too much. You must recognize this, right? You're thinking, I'd rather have too much than not enough. And this is what psychologists call the good mother syndrome. So anyway, I'm stuck with my leftover risotto, and I'm surely not going to waste it. So the next day, I take my risotto leftovers from the refrigerator, I mix it up with an egg, some flour, and some breadcrumbs that I made of stale bread. Just enough so the whole thing sticks together. And then I shape it into a burger, I fry it, serve it with some bread and lettuce. Doesn't this look like a restaurant-worthy burger to you, instead of yesterday's leftovers? I've got one more great tip for you today. So every now and then, we all end up with dry, fusty bread, right? And if you don't want to eat it, I get that. But don't waste it. Remember, turn dust into gold. Did you know that you can make a quiche with stale bread? It's really easy. You just replace the pastry with the bread. And it actually works much better with stale bread than it does with fresh bread. And then you just make the quiche like you normally would, or from a recipe. And this is what you get. It's way healthier, it looks amazing, it tastes great, and the best of all, you don't have to waste the bread. So again, these were just two examples of how you can turn leftovers into new ingredients by thinking out of the box. But I promise you, there are many, many more like these. And I can tell because I filled up a whole book with great ideas for cooking with leftovers. So these were my 3 rules that will help you becoming the king or queen of leftovers. Don't let good food turn into waste, and don't turn it into a prison meal either. Just keep your food alive, don't be afraid of it, and turn those leftovers into great dishes. Because I believe life is like a kitchen. When you use the ingredients to the fullest, you will get the best out of it. And in many, many years from now, I will cook for my grandchildren. And whenever I find potatoes in their pockets, instead of feeding it to the birds, at least I will turn them into tasty chips. Thank you.